Florida State's quarterback played phenomenally this weekend, and it made an ESPN analyst sing his praises during the broadcast on Saturday afternoon. But to some FSU fans, this wasn't a surprise at all. Jordan hasn't been as sharp as some fans would want this year, but his numbers have still been really elite. In fact, if you compare them to where he was through 8 games of last year's season, they are markedly better. And he's played pretty well when the brightest lights have been on and the nation has been watching. And just as an FYI, that's been every single weekend. Florida State has been in the top 11 of nationally viewed games every weekend except for the one game that was on the ACC network against Southern Miss, and the ACC network doesn't report into Nielsen. So they could have been top 10 that weekend. It's just tough to know. But how does he compare to the other guys who are in the running for the Heisman, and what are his odds of winning it? Well, we'll talk about that, but first I want you to listen to what Robert Griffin III, 2011 Heisman winner, said from this broadcast this weekend about Jordan Travis.
That's been at the helm leading them that entire time has been Jordan Travis. And today, like I said, he's been sensational, and he's played himself into the Heisman conversation. I say that was a Heisman-like throw. Jordan Travis does not get the love that he deserves. But I can tell you what, from us, he certainly will.
Now, I love what RG3 says here. And I don't say that often because RG3 says some ridiculous things on the air during games. He's actually not a bad commentator, but some of the things that he says unrelated to football just make you scratch your head. In fact, this weekend he said, put that man on his knees like he's a toilet seat. Now, I have no idea what he meant when he was saying this. And thinking about it for about the last 24 hours, my guess is that he was making a reference to throwing up, like you'd be on your knees if you were throwing up into a toilet seat. But I truly just don't know. If you can figure it out or you can decipher what he meant, please let me know down in the comments below. Now, back to JT. The only thing that I'll disagree with Robert Griffin on his comments is that Jordan has just now entered the Heisman race. He's been comfortably there since the offseason. In fact, there's a false narrative out there that Jordan has ever been out of this race. He's never been worse than like 5th or 6th in the Heisman odds. And as long as Florida State keeps winning and kept winning along the way, he was going to be in it. Right now, he's 5th in Heisman odds, and we'll talk about each one of those guys in just a moment, but his numbers could increase very, very soon. Let's look at the stats for Jordan Travis, Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and J.J. McCarthy at Michigan. Well, Jordan's first up. He's 65% completion percentage, 2,100 yards, 18 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. He's got a little over 200 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. When you look at Michael Penix, a little bit better completion percentage, more yards, a couple more touchdowns, more interceptions as well. He certainly throws the ball a lot more than JT does. Doesn't run at all. Not a threat with his legs. No touchdowns. Negative yards rushing, obviously, from sacks. But maybe a little bit better passing numbers. Not quite as good on the ground, but he's also throwing the ball way more than Jordan Travis is. Their offense is pretty one-trick pony. When you look at Jaden Daniels, he's had some really impressive wins. The only guy up here with 2 losses. Really good completion percentage. Again, throws the ball way more than JT does. 2,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 3 picks. Also been great on the ground. 500-plus yards, 5 touchdowns rushing. What's hurting him right now is probably the 2 losses, and it'd be pretty shocking if LSU didn't pick up a third one at some point during the year. But Jaden Daniels is up there as well. Really good numbers. You've got Nix up at Oregon. He's got really good numbers as well. 78% completion percentage, 23-37 as far as yards go, 21-1 touchdowns. Doesn't run a ton, but does have 3 touchdowns on the ground this year. He's had a good year as well. They're in the Pac-12. They ask him to throw a lot, but they do run. They're a little bit more balanced. And then McCarthy up there at Michigan probably has the weakest stats of anybody up there, but Michigan's looked like a pretty big wrecking force for the Big Ten. 78% completion percentage, less than 1,800 yards, but just barely. 18 touchdowns, 1 more pick than JT has. 168 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. To me, he has the weakest stats, but he's the quarterback on the best team. Now, whether you like it or not, that's exactly what you need to win the Heisman. being a QB on a really good team is what matters most. I want to talk about each one of these guys, and we'll start with the Pac-12 guys first. So we'll look at Penix. I think Washington has been a pretty sexy pick, but unfortunately for them, I don't think they're going to finish 13-0. They nearly blew it against Stanford, and they looked pretty mediocre against Arizona. Now, Penix is still way up there in Heisman odds, but I think they'll lose at least one more game throughout the year, maybe two, and that'll probably knock him out of the running. Bo Nix has really good stats too. And Oregon has Cal, USC, Arizona State, and Oregon State to finish up the season. They should win each of those 4 games, but you never know with a rivalry late. And USC certainly hasn't looked very good the last couple of weeks, but that offense can be dangerous. If Nix continues to win, which I think they actually will keep winning, I think that he'll finish in the top 3 and have a great chance to win it. I think that one of these Pac-12 quarterbacks between Nix and Penix is going to eliminate themselves, if not before, but once they meet each other in the Pac-12 championship. Whoever wins that head-to-head for the championship trophy is probably going to take the other guy out, which is maybe unfair to Penix because he did go out and win the very first one. But I think winning that Pac-12 championship is going to cement one of them into the top 3 and have the other fall out. Now, they could both eliminate themselves if they lose beforehand, but I think that you get one step closer to Jordan in that top 3 because one of those guys is going to take the other out, just like the playoffs as well. Jaden Daniels has a really tough game this weekend against Alabama coming up, in which he's going to go into that game as an underdog. Now, he's got great stats, and in this game, he's either going to increase his odds of winning the Heisman or he's going to eliminate himself with the 3rd LSU loss of the season. This is kind of a catch-22 or a roll of the dice for LSU because he can either make himself known and have really that Heisman moment by beating Alabama on the road, or he can be completely out of the race with his 3rd loss of the season. Not sure which way this one goes, but even if they beat Alabama this weekend, I think that they'll end up going and losing late to Georgia in the SEC championship, and I just don't see Jaden staying in it. Now, if they win against Alabama, then they beat Georgia, he's going to win the trophy because that will have been a phenomenal run to end the season, and I think they give it to him, even with the 2 losses. Manziel won it with 2 losses a couple of years ago. I think that Jaden would win it too. I just don't see them winning both of those games. For that reason, I think Jaden falls out of it as well. You've got McCarthy, and his stats, like we said, are just okay. He's been really solid, but he has less touchdowns than anyone else and less yards than anyone else as well. Now, if they keep winning, I think he stays in it. But if he doesn't beat OSU with his kind of pedestrian stats, I do think he'll fall out of this race. But if they go 13-0, there is no doubt that he will be in New York City for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Does he win it or not? To be determined. But that's his path to get to New York City. And then you're left with Jordan Travis. And FSU is more likely to win out than any other team. And Jordan is going to have some opportunities down the stretch to go absolutely nuts with stats. He's got a Pitt team that may be quitting on their head coach this week after his comments this weekend. A Miami team with a terrible, terrible secondary. A North Alabama team where he will put up some numbers because he hasn't played both of his non-Power 5 or Group of 5 teams just yet, and then UF at the end of the year, where he can go on the road in the swamp and put up numbers as well. And then you potentially have Louisville in the ACC championship game, which Jordan could do work in that game as well. Well, what will also help Jordan this year is that there's no real dominant figure. There's no Jameis Winston or Johnny Manziel that everyone has kind of dubbed from week 1 until now as the for sure Heisman winner. That will help Jordan a ton because any quarterback that is 13-0 is going to be there in New York City for the trophy ceremony. Now, I don't know if Jordan wins it or not. I think a lot of that is going to have to do with how he looks over these final 5 weeks. Yeah, 5 weeks because he's going to play in the ACC championship. How does he look there? Can Florida State stay unbeaten and can his stats continue to look really good? One representative from the Pac-12 is probably going to be there, and I think Jordan Travis is probably going to be there. And then if McCarthy keeps winning, or even if they go 12-1 or 11-1, because I think they'll lose if they lose to Ohio State, I think he would be in as well. But again, one guy from the Pac-12 is probably going to get eliminated from the race. Jaden Daniels will probably get eliminated from the race, and you'll be left with those 3 other quarterbacks. Now, can Jordan Travis win it? Can he, as one of the final remaining guys, be the one to lift the trophy? I think he needs another couple performances like he had against Wake Forest. And what he did on Saturday with 350 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, another one on the ground, so 4 total, is the way that you get voters' attention. That game also happened on ABC when a lot of people were watching. It was, again, one of the most widely watched games of the weekend. You also will get an opportunity to play Miami. There's a very good chance that's a 3:30 or a late game on ABC. That will be a big deal as well because more and more people will be watching. There is an East Coast bias, and you might have a leg up on some of those guys out on the West Coast. You also get the game against Florida late in the year. Don't be shocked if that's a game that, because the Iron Bowl is always at noon and you've always got other games kind of going on, don't be surprised if that's a game that's on at 3:30 on ABC either, with a lot of people tuned in to watch. Against a bad defense, Jordan Travis could put up some sick numbers, and if he does that in 3 or 4 of the remaining games that he's going to play, he's certainly going to have a chance. The other side of this that a lot of people may not realize or may not be thinking about is that these voters love a story. They love attaching a narrative or a story to performance. And if Jordan is a 13-0 quarterback that has some of the best stats in the country and has led his team to the college football playoff a couple of years after almost quitting on football completely, with Mike Norvell and Kenny Dillingham turning around his mindset and putting him from a guy that wanted to quit football to the Heisman Trophy ceremony, that's going to get a lot of votes in and of itself. Again, that dominant guy doesn't exist out there. I know Penix has the lead in Heisman odds right now, but I'm telling you, that is not going to hold up. I really like for Florida State's Jordan Travis to not only make it to New York City, but if he goes in at 13-0 and the Noles are in the college football playoff, which we expect at this point, he's going to have a great chance to lift up the hardware. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you have winning it? Where do you see Jordan Travis finishing? Is he a top 3 guy? Am I wrong? Is he not going to New York City for the ceremony? There's nothing that says only 3 guys go. There have been years where they invited 3, 4, 5. There have been years where different things have happened. But I think if Jordan Travis is 13-0, his numbers continue to increase and improve. He throws another 1,000 or 1,500 yards over the next 5 weeks, gets another 10, 15 touchdowns over the next 5 weeks. He's the kind of guy that's going to be in New York City for the ceremony. And hopefully he's your first winner for the Noles in the last 10 years since Jameis Winston won it in 2013. Let's talk about it down in the comments. I appreciate you guys for watching, tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.